Muchísimas gracias a todos por venir. Creo que ya tenéis todos auriculares. Si no, si alguien no coge auriculares puede conseguirlos fuera. Se conectan así en un lateral. Y bueno, pues vamos a empezar. I'm so pleased to be here with you both. Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
It's been 40 years since you were shooting here in Spain, The Heat.
Yes.
With actors such as Enrique de San Francisco, El Pirri, these kinky Spanish genre actors. So I wanted to ask you, what do you remember about this shooting with those kind of actors that maybe weren't easy to handle? Can you tell us about your experience shooting The Heat here in Spain?
They were very easy to handle because they all sat in a car, so they couldn't move. I remember it. No, it was a lovely time, and we had very, very good caterers. The things that really matter on films. And we drove from Cordoba up to the Pyrenees.
So, also you...
and Fernando Rey, he was... Fernando Rey was in it. And Laura del Sol. Beautiful.
And also with music by Paco de Lucía.
He did the music, yes.
Yeah.
He and Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
God, what a combo.
So, I want to ask you, first of all, I just saw your first short, The Burning.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh my God, I haven't even seen that myself.
And, well, I have been reading about your biography and so, and I saw that your father had been deployed to South Africa in the Second World War.
Yeah.
So, what's the connection about South Africa and then deciding to talk about this?
There was no connection.
No connection at all.
It's the first time that's the first time it's ever crossed my mind that my father was in South Africa during the war and that the film was set in South Africa. In fact, it was from a short story written by a South African. But it never crossed my mind there was a more complicated, unconscious journey.
And also, it's this film talks about apartheid and also about these racial differences and inequalities. There is a theme that has gone through all your career. I think you told that you are part of this generation that comes after the Second World War, that there was poverty around, and so directors as yourself or Ken Loach or Mike Leigh, they have this humanistic gaze, this social gaze that I think it's getting lost maybe, and also the social rights that you conquered that we are losing. What do you think about the society that will come, the cinema that will come, and what do we need to happen to gain back these rights and get back this kind of cinema?
Well, in my country, after the truth is there was an enormous change that took place after the Second World War.
Yeah.
And there was a great Labour government, and they brought in this whole different society. And it was very, very invigorating. They changed things like the system of education. So suddenly, hundreds of thousands of people were being educated properly.
The health system.
The health system, yes. And in the 1950s, the children who were now being educated, they started to produce books and films and plays. And the people who taught me were those people who changed the cinema, who changed the novel, who changed the theatre. There was actually an incredible, vigorous moment going on in Britain.
Stephen was at the Royal Court, which was really
the central place to it all.
It was an extraordinary place with extraordinary people. And I think, just as a picture of Stephen's life, when you think about it and you think of these films, it is a portrait of Britain,
Yeah.
Yes.
And this in a time of transformation and change.
Yeah.
And if you look at the range, it's an extraordinary story, whether it's about, when you think of My Beautiful Laundrette, when you think about The Deal, when you think about The Queen, when you think about Dirty Pretty Things and Sam and Aunt Rosie get laid. I mean, there's just an amazing range of narrative and story.
They started giving an account of life in Britain that was completely different from the way Britain had been before the war, which is what you saw.
Now that you're talking about theater, about the royal court, and so, you were studying law in Cambridge, and then you get in touch with this theatrical scene, and you start to work in the royal court. So, what has theater helped you as a filmmaker? As I don't know, the mise en scene, or how to deal with actors and with characters. And also, I wanted to ask you about your relationship with Lindsay Anderson and Albert Finney. And so, can you tell us about this?
Well, I met Lindsay Anderson. Actually, I met him in Mallorca, now I think about it. And he was involved in running the court. And anyway, I went there as an assistant director, as a very junior apprentice, and the Royal Court was really a theatre of writers, and they taught me to have respect for the writing, that the writing was somehow central to everything, and they taught me about actors. They taught me how to cast actors. I mean, it was very, very educative for me. And I learned good lessons there, and when I stick to those lessons, I'm all right. When I depart from them, I tend to get into trouble.
Talking about that casting, that craft that you have on casting actors, I was thinking that you work with Uma Thurman in Dangerous Liaisons, and she was not really known. She has done some, I think, Terry Gilliam's film. And now I think you are working with Maya Hawke.
I hope so.
Yes.
Because it's a film Wilder and Me. I was in Berlin and I saw this teaser trailer.
No. It's a film about Billy Wilder, who was a great director. And we're supposed to make it next year. And we've had to wait that long because the strikes in America caused chaos. So we've had to wait for Maya.
We were in Vienna, and that's where Billy Wilder came from.
Yes.
And also, Stephen has the inheritance of people like Carol Reed, who made The Third Man, and Carol Rice, and all these, Lindsay, all these great English filmmakers. But and of course Orson Welles, who was in The Third Man, and the Billy Wilder story.
It's about Fedora.
Stephen, what's interesting about that is the story of Fedora and the story of someone at a certain point in his career when things...
Well, a friend of mine in England wrote a novel about Billy Wilder making the last film that you might call a Billy Wilder film. He did make another film, but he didn't like to talk about it. Things go wrong at the end of your career. As you take one look at me, things are going wrong. Bits fall off. And... bits were falling off Billy Wilder, so he made this film Fedora and got into a mess. And then my friend, the English novelist who worships Billy Wilder more than me, wrote a novel about Wilder in this situation.
In fact, I told Stephen the story, but it's an interesting thing about Billy Wilder. I was in Los Angeles, and I was meeting Billy Wilder, and we'd just done that series on the television. And when I went to his office, he had a temporary secretary, and she said, I was waiting for Billy Wilder, and she said to me, "Who is Billy Wilder?" That's his secretary. Wow. That's what happens. It might happen to Stephen. Who knows?
Almost certainly. Most people in the street would say exactly that.
Also, I think you're not only a person who makes films, but also a person who likes to know about the history of films, of making, because you have done this beautiful documentary about the story of British filmmaking. How would you... I want to ask you, how do you see it in British cinema nowadays, in the context when the big franchises are overtaking the conversation on cinema?
Well, if I'm being honest, I don't think it's you either work for the Americans, you either work with the Americans or I don't know what you do. The independent cinema has sort of gone virtually.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
I wish it hadn't, but it has.
It's ironic because there's lots of movies being made in Britain, in London. They're building studios, but they're all being made
for the Americans.
For the American studios, and the tax advantages are all theirs.
Yes.
And the independent filmmakers
Finished.
and stories of Britain are very difficult, and that's what Stephen has always.
So it's it's very uneconomic to make a film about Britain. I mean, in fact, My Beautiful Laundrette did very, very well. And occasionally, you could also make films about the royal family. They allow you to make films about the royal family. And as we know, the royal family is full of infinite stories, particularly if you listen to Twitter. So you're allowed to make films about the royal family.
You can make 2 films. They're making 2 films about Prince Andrew.
Well, that's a lot to handle, Prince Andrew.
I think I turned both of them down.
Oh, yeah. That's funny.
I just recently saw again My Beautiful Laundrette, and it really appealed to me that I find it very avant-garde in the way it talks about not only immigration, but also sex, homosexual relationships, and also in Sammy and Rosie, there are also lesbian characters, and so I wanted to ask you, how do you see now this portrayal that I think it's more, you can see more often these kind of characters, but at the time, those were very unusual characters.
Well, I met this chap called Hanif Qureshi, who has a
British
father from Pakistan and a mother from England. And he went to school in South London, and in fact one day he had a great friend in the school who one day came in with his head shaved, who had become a skinhead. And Hanif is very politically acute. I mean, he's a brilliant writer and writes very good jokes, and he wrote this film script, and I got my hands on it, and it was very, very good. And it was full of, oddly enough, the homosexuality, which I enjoyed reading very much, but I didn't think that was what was most important about it. I thought it was very good on Mrs. Thatcher, who clearly was an enormous presence in the life of any Englishman. Yeah. Then it turned out, when it went round it really did play all around the world. And it turned out the world had been waiting for a film about homosexuals in which they didn't die or get aid or anyway, which was a happy film. Yeah. And the truth is, I'd learnt all that at the Royal Court.
And you insisted, didn't you, on a happy ending?
I said it has to have a happy ending. Yeah. Yes.
Endings are quite important to Stephen.
Well, for anybody.
Okay.
So I said it had to have, but it's only happy in the last 10 seconds. It's miserable up to then. And then we were very, in the end, you realize how lucky you are that, that Dan Day-Lewis was standing there waiting to be discovered, and one day things go right.
And you had quite a choice, didn't you, of who to play in that part?
Well, I had Dan Day-Lewis, I had Kenneth Branagh, Gary Oldman, and Tim Roth. And the girls all said, "Oh, you want Dan?" That was the end.
Okay, so you named the name, Margaret Thatcher. So you have a very humanistic gaze, and you try to find this human side in all kind of characters. You, being an anti-monarchical Republican person, you portrayed the Queen. Would you portray Margaret Thatcher? Would you try to find? Would you do some try to find the humanity in this character?
Oddly, if I may make a film about Margaret Thatcher, there is a script which, in this modern way, may or may not get done, but it is about Margaret Thatcher. And the truth is, as you get older, maybe you go soft or you get more tolerant of her. I mean, she was very effective. Nowadays, I mean, the Prime Minister of England is a sort of joke, and he's completely ineffective. He can't do anything. So you find, oh, well, there was this woman who actually got things done. Perhaps she had virtues that I didn't realize at the time. But she was a monster. And she just sort of loomed everything like a crab. And she did terrible things, which, I mean, Britain is in such a mess at the moment. It's in a real mess. And you can trace it all back to Mrs. Thatcher. He'll tell you, he's an economist. He knows I'm right.
So, something that you speak about...
So, for some reason... Sorry, if I'm boring, stop me. For some reason, at the time, when I made my beautiful laundrette and Sammy and Rosie and Prick Up Her Ears and then The Grifters and Dangerous Liaisons, in my head, they were all anti-Thatcher films. And I somehow identified these films which were about women, terrible things, women, homosexuals, people on the edges of society. And they seemed to be expressions of hostility to Mrs. Thatcher. I mean, she did hate homosexuals and passed this terrible law. So I somehow muddled up all these characters who are in these films. To me, they were anti-Thatcher, and that's what I did for.
The other thing about all those films is you've never made generic films. They're always storytelling of and whatever suits that story, whether it's comedy or tragedy or whatever it is, you bring all those elements come into the story. They're not. People don't say you make these kind of movies or those kind of movies.
No, they have a lot of layers and different genres, like.
Very so. That's where I went wrong. I should have just.
He likes to call himself a jobbing director, a director for hire. That's what he likes to call himself. I think you're a storyteller looking for other storytellers who have.
Yes, but I'm always parasitic. Someone has to write something. And then when I read it, I think, oh, that's fantastic. I'd love to do that. You know, The Laundrette was written by somebody else. I'm a white imperialist. I knew nothing about the world that Hanif was writing about. He had to come and explain everything to me. Oh, there were these ships that came from Karachi and brought all these people, and it was slowly explained to me. And then the cast, none of the cast were Pakistani, I remember that. And they used to explain it all to me. Oh, well, I do this. This is who we all are. So it was very, very interesting, but it didn't come from me. I just had these curious ways of identifying things that were going on.
I have read also an interview with Qureshi that said that there was a lot of conversation. And when you work with the scriptwriters, it's like you sit down and page by page, it's just conversation.
Yeah.
So it's your way of directing more than an imposition, a conversation, just a discussion that's even with actors, with everyone involved.
Well, you have conversations with everybody. You just talk. And slowly it sorts itself out. Or if you're lucky, it all then sorts itself out. But yeah. And the first person is the writer.
It's interesting about your relationship with actors, because Hugh is very entertaining about that, as are others. But there is this situation where you sit back and let them be. But he was saying, when you really want something, and John Malkovich says the same thing, then you come in and you engage and they listen.
Well, if they get it wrong, they should be punished. Yes. You really do. Oh, Billy Wilder, John Huston, me, he said it immodestly. You direct with your ear, really, and you can hear the conviction in the voice. You can hear when it's right. Alan Bennett used to lie under the table. You just can hear, and it's believable, and hear when it's false.
So you don't look at the combo, or do you look at the combo, or do you prefer to be more in touch?
I sit beside the camera, or I used to. I would sit beside. I remember on Liaison, there was a little tiny television for the focus puller. And I used to sit, and that was the first time I'd ever seen a video monitor. Now everybody sits in these, salons at the back.
Yeah.
And I'm ashamed to say I do too. But I just used to sit by the camera, and I could tell everything. I could tell about the compositions.
Going back to this conversation about My Beautiful Laundrette and immigration and so, nowadays in the United Kingdom and in Britain you have the mayor of London. He's from a Pakistani accent.
I can't hear.
The mayor of London, he's from Pakistani accent.
Yes.
And Rishi Sunak, he's from Tanzanian Hindu accent. So the picture in Britain has changed.
Well,
in some way.
He knows much more about it than I do.
I mean, but it is fascinating that we have got, someone of Pakistani origin. Most of the very right-wing, difficult, anti-immigrant people in this government
Are immigrants.
are immigrants, are
Yes.
children of immigrants. Just like Donald Trump, if you like to say. So,
That's a paradox.
as Stephen
Yes.
says, yes, that's why it's such an extraordinary mess that you can't quite get to grips with.
I mean, I grew up in a completely white society, white middle-class society. There was no... Nowadays, it's much more interesting, much more exotic. Or Hanif, you say, oh, you like it because it's exotic in some rather unkind way, which he's probably right about. But now, the multiculturalism, it is wonderful to everybody except Suella Braverman.
And Priti Patel.
Yes, I'm sure she hates multiculturalism. And nowadays, they were insulting the mayor of London the other day, wasn't he? A very right-wing Tory was insulting the mayor of London.
Is his name Anderson? Is it Lee Anderson? Yeah.
But you also have said that, I guess you have, you used to live in Notting Hill, and you have also a place in the countryside?
Not anymore.
Not anymore? Oh. And the thing is that, as your characters in Sammy and Rosie, they say this thing, they say, we are Londoners, we are not British.
Yes, that's right.
So I guess Britain is still in two speeds. I mean, there is this main cities that are very multicultural, and this.
Well, they always used to say that in London it was a multicultural society. In Dorset, it was the 1930s. I mean, it is absolutely separated, and I mean, I don't know if it was 20 years ago, and I have a black friend, and she would come down to Dorset, and you could see people staring at her because they'd never seen a black person before.
Yeah, and that's, I find it interesting that, how would I say, your immigrant characters also, they aren't portrayed with this complacental side, or this, I don't know, treating them too careful. They have this paradox. They are some controversial as the cousin of the main character of Mar. So, do you think that nowadays, as they are not, back in the time, most directors used to be from rich or accommodate families, and also who studied it. Nowadays, people who study in film schools, most of them, they are kind of expensive. But do you think that now there's a wider view, because more different people from different backgrounds, there's a wider view of society and filming?
Yes, I suppose so. Sometimes it seems diverse, and sometimes it doesn't seem diverse. It's like making films about the royal family. Not very diverse, really, is it?
So, also wanted to know, I wanted to know about your time in the BBC, because people say that there is a gap, but it isn't a gap. That's why I wanted to ask you. I saw also your report, St. Anne.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I did my job.
One of the awful things about being a film director is that these early films haunt you. It would be nice if some of them were burnt.
I mean, Stephen talked about the Royal Court and talked about this extraordinary moment where all these these writers and filmmakers, and they were writers and filmmakers quite often, were able to start to tell stories about this changing state of Britain. And he also went to, his other birthplace was the BBC, where there were writers like Alan Bennett and others, and a thing called The Play for Today, which told stories of
It was
today.
like a nursery for young filmmakers. I learned how to make films there. You know, I would make 3 or 4 a year, and they gradually got longer, and then eventually they, you know, with My Beautiful Laundrette, it sort of burst out of the television set and into the cinema. But it was a very good place to learn.
Yeah, because there were many people that Ken Loach also worked there.
Ken was there, yeah, Ken was there, Mike was there.
Yeah, and also you have worked with some of the writers that you have been working on later.
Yes.
So how has it changed now that the public television has not this?
How has it changed?
Yeah.
Well, he would know more than I know, but that doesn't happen anymore. It was a wonderful place. You didn't get rich, but you were given a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunities, but you didn't get rich. Now I guess you get rich, and it's more imprisoned in some way.
Stephen has worked in television and film, and more recently, he has actually made some amazing TV series. I mean, I don't know if you've seen A Very English Scandal, which is one of the best things of the last few years. An incredible story, again, about both politics, sexuality, you know, human relationships, the personal, the political, all of these things. And it has humour in it, and yet at the same time it's sort of rather appalling story, a sort of shocking story. It's an amazing series. Yeah, and he does work in TV and film.
That's where the money is, in TV.
Well, I had also the chance to see State of the Union.
See what?
State of the Union.
Oh, next, yes.
Yeah, and I really loved it because it's like if you go to a play and it's just 2 chairs and just the characters and just the actors, like a tete-a-tete. And I wanted to ask you about working back with Nick Hornby and just with these dialogues that are so fast and so sweet.
Yes. Well, one of the people I got to know was Nick Hornby, because I made High Fidelity, which was a novel that he wrote. And then one day he sent me these short films and said, you know, would you like to do these? And I said, well, I'm not doing anything, so yes, it would be a pleasure. And we went and shot them, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, very quickly.
Yeah, and I find that also the cast is kind of, for example, I have like Chris O'Dowd. I have him just the pure comedy, and he has a very layered and very balanced. Tell me how was
the actors are very, very good, and when they read writing like that,
Rosamund
they respond.
Pike.
Yes, they respond to it. They like good, you know, they like good writing, and Nick is a very, very good writer.
And High Fidelity is a wonderfully entertaining film, and Jack Black gives an amazing performance in that as well. He complained about Stephen, because Stephen said at some point, you did an interview in which he said that when we took the rushes home, everybody thought that Jack was great. And Jack said to me, he never told me that. He never told me I was great.
We made it for Disney.
Yeah.
And Disney in Hollywood. And in the Disney studio, there's a place called Dopey Drive.
Yeah.
And then the main building is held up by 7 dwarves. Anyway, they used to show the rushes in there every night. We were in Chicago. They would show the rushes in there. And when word got out about Jack Black, the rushes people used to come from all over the studio to see Jack.
No,
he was wonderful.
Thing I'd like to ask you about, because there's someone in the audience today, and I looked again, I saw Stephen's film called Snapper, which was, I thought, written by Roddy Doyle, like The Van, and to me that's one of the most amazing achievements of your career. I mean, and something that was sort of, you know, when I first saw it, I obviously liked it, but when I saw it again, I thought it was amazing. And of course, it's a film about Ireland, a transformational moment in Ireland's history. And here's this Brit making it who probably didn't know much about Ireland anyway when he
They used to
started.
take me around Dublin and say, oh, that's where the English shot so-and-so. They had to frighten me. Oh, that's where such and such a terrible atrocity happened and the English were responsible. They were very, very funny.
And there was that amazing performance by an Irishman.
Colm.
Yeah.
Colm Meaney, wonderful.
Yeah, Colm Meaney.
But it was very successful. It won the Prix Goya, so show a little respect. And it was very successful here, and Liaison Dangereuse was very successful here. And I remember thinking, why are these films successful in two Catholic countries? And then somebody today said, well, at the time that Liaison came out, we were sort of protesting against the tyranny of the Catholic Church. And the same happened in Ireland. At the same time that we were making The Snapper, the divorce laws were being changed. So on two occasions, I had somehow turned up at the right moment when, I used to say to Roddy, this is about the separation of church and state, because Ireland before that had been really a theocracy. And then they emerged from it. And I guess the same about, maybe that's true of Spain. But it was very striking that I made these two films that were very successful in Catholic countries, and I thought, I wonder, why is that? And today they answered the question.
Well, also you talk in the film My Beautiful Laundrette, you talk also about religion and money, like being more important than religion, because these characters that they came from Pakistan, and say, okay, they are turning this our country into a very religious state, and religion just doesn't get well with business. No, how do you think that when you were like directing these films on neo-capitalism, do you think that we would arrive to the point we are now, with like money taking over everything, and as you say, people like nowadays in the film industry.
The BBC and Channel 4 is that they were subsidised.
Yeah.
There was a way of paying for the BBC through the licence fee, and Channel 4 had its own system of financing. So they were made, there was no obligation to make money.
Yeah.
And now, it isn't like that anymore. You have to make money for people. Oh, you're spending public money, which is, you have to answer for. So that, in that sense, things have changed. In fact, the laundrette did make a lot of money, which took everybody by surprise, including me. But it's all to do with the economics. You should ask him. He knows much more about it than I do.
And before filmmaking, the films were like the producers in the beginning. Then you are against the theory of author, but then the films were or the property of, not property, they were like the director's film or the main star film. And nowadays we are seeing like this change into the platform films. Nowadays you can see this Netflix film, this Amazon film, and you don't see the name of the director.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Terrible.
What do you think about that?
I didn't know
That's
It's the beginning of the end. I'm very old. I've done all that. I've passed through it all. I'm out the other side. I'm safe.
I mean, talking about films which made an impact and told a story, and he's dissing the royal family at the moment, but The Deal and The Queen were two fantastically sort of successful films, and one of them was about a story that was little told about the relationship between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and the other, again, a story of no one had done that before. No one had dared go there. Now they all go there.
Do you have the Crown in Spain? You have the Crown? You have the Crown on TV?
Yeah.
All thanks to me.
Yeah.
Did I earn any money? Not a bean.
So we have 10 minutes left, so I think that now we can let the audience to ask you some questions. So the only thing you have to do, I'm going to translate you the question. I'm going to be the one.
Translate.
Okay, so,
¿Quién
quiere hacer una pregunta?
Oh no, have you got? Oh, you're going to tell him.
I'm going to tell him the.
Okay, fine.
I think he may be Irish.
Yeah, I am.
He is.
Okay, so.
No translation needed, sorry. First of all, I'd like to say, I think I speak on a lot of Irish people's behalf, but thank you very, very much for a lot of the cinema you've done for Ireland. And John Borman, I don't know, not a lot of people in the same bracket who've done things which really represent Ireland. This is not a weird kind of a pastiche version of Ireland that you've brought. This is very much Ireland that you've brought to cinema. It's not this weird kind of American John Ford version of Ireland. It's literally Ireland, you know? So
Yes, but if you trace it back, you know, Roddy Doyle wrote the trilogy. He wrote the script, and then I turned up, knew nothing, and was gradually educated by Roddy and by all the actors and all the people making the film. So I didn't have an opinion about anything.
That's skill. I think that's why you were good, because you were willing to listen and to understand and to know what you're getting yourself involved in. You didn't come with a preconceived idea of what Ireland was, and therefore what was presented to you was real. And that becomes very, very clear in the films that you make. And I'd like to say Philomena, for example, for me that's a massively powerful film. Massively, in the sense that you could easily have been vindictive in that film, and you could have easily destroyed the church. And there's a moment in the film where Judi Dench's character Philomena gets the opportunity to confront the nuns, and she sees them as people. And unfortunately in Ireland we suffered from that for a long time, where an awful lot of people could easily have been vindictive, but they suffered so much because they saw the humanity in the other. And you represented that phenomenally.
Well, at the end, she forgives the nun, doesn't she?
Exactly. And
Did they show Philomena here?
Pardon?
Did they show Philomena here?
Yeah, of course.
and for me, thank you, because I think you were able to represent how angry we are as Irish people towards what has happened.
Well, it is dreadful.
We let it happen because we forgive too easily. You know? So,
And that's a story which has got resonance for many, not just in Ireland or in Britain or anywhere else. It really does register everywhere.
Ahí tenemos una pregunta, ahí.
Many of the roles of your films sorry for my English. I will try my best. Many of the roles of your films are with women.
Yes.
Powerful women.
Good point.
What's your interest of women about?
My mother was very powerful. The women I married were very powerful. My partner is very powerful. My daughter is very powerful. I've never met a woman who wasn't very powerful. I've had a terrible life.
Do you think women are more interesting than men for a filmmaker?
Well, not for John Ford. But, I think I probably do find them more interesting. Well, I have no idea.
All these women, great women actresses, loved working with Stephen, of course. That's another thing. He had a very good relationship. They don't feel, they feel good working with him. I think that's important. And there's a whole range of
I
them.
don't honestly know why. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I can see it, what's happened, but I have no explanation.
¿Alguna pregunta más? ¿No seáis tímidos por aquí?
Did you enjoy doing the regime?
Yeah, it was good fun. Yeah. It's this huge HBO series with Kate Winslet that's about to be on, or is on, or something. Listen, we were in Vienna. They gave us a lot of palaces. We had a wonderful time. And HBO is a very good company. So it was a pleasure to do. And Kate is so brilliant. Kate is a brilliant actress.
Yeah, I mean, she got the most amazing responses in the papers in America.
Has she?
Oh,
Good.
yeah, she has.
Good.
I saw them all, yeah.
Good. No, she's phenomenal. Incredible. But then she's British, so of course it's no surprise.
¿No se te oye? A ver.
Is it working?
Ah,
There's another
vale,
one here.
ahora se escucha.
Here's another.
Varias preguntas. Una era su opinión sobre la Margaret Thatcher de Meryl Streep.
Your opinion on the Margaret Thatcher that betrayed Meryl Streep? What was your opinion?
Meryl Streep, you were talking about?
Yeah. What's your opinion on the Margaret Thatcher
I never
Meryl
saw it.
Streep portrayed?
I did say to Pathy, you didn't ask me to make that. And they said, yes, we did. I said, well, you didn't ask me when you got Meryl. They said, I never saw it. Was it interesting?
Que sí era interesante, sí.
I never saw it.
Contar un poquito más sobre la nueva película que ha dicho que estaba en ello.
She wants to know more details on the film, the Wilder and Me film. If you
On
can,
the-
Wilder and Me film. If you can tell something else about it.
The Billy Wilder film.
Well, Billy Wilder, it's about a young Greek-English girl who meets Billy Wilder and goes to work on the film. So she watches Wilder making this late film in his career and learns about him in the course of it. It's a sad story.
No happy ending. Not even at the very end.
I think the last line is nobody's perfect. No. I mean, he did have the end of his life was very, very sad. He didn't make a film for the last 20 years, and in fact, Steven Spielberg tells the story. They said, "Did you know Wilder?" He said, "Yes," and Wilder said, "I want to talk to you," and Steven Spielberg said, "No, I'll come and all right, I'll drop in." And Wilder said, "No, I want to come to you now." And Wilder wanted to make Schindler's List. And Spielberg said, "But on 3 days' time, I go to Poland to make it." So he'd missed the bus. But Wilder, Wilder lost his mother, certainly in the camps. And really, it's a lot of our film is about that, about him losing his parents at, I don't know which camp they died in, Auschwitz, don't know. But it's about that. And so he was desperate to make Schindler's List.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And of course, Steven Spielberg, who's passionate about that whole backstory.
no.
Yeah.
But he, of course, got Stanley Kubrick to help him make that because that was one of his.
Well, Stanley Kubrick never helped me.
He'll get in trouble when he gets up there.
¿Hay una pregunta por ahí?
Have you ever heard a quote that is attributed to Billy Wilder? He said, apparently, He said apparently that Germans make the best Americans and the worst Germans.
The best Americans and the worst?
Germans make the best Americans when they go to America, and what was it?
Do Americans make the best Germans?
And Americans make the best Germans, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Have you ever heard of that one?
When he went to America, he couldn't speak English.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And he ended up writing films. I mean, you can't work. He always used to have another writer because he didn't think he was as good as he should be. So he worked with, well, in our film, he works with I.L. Diamond, and before that, he worked with a man called Charles Brackett. They're extraordinary. Who's the man? Pressburger, Emmerich Pressburger. He came to England. He learned to speak English by going to watch football matches and listening to the people talking. And where I live in London is where T.S. Eliot used to live. And he would get the dialogue in the wasteland he got from the pub around the corner. So Wilder somehow learnt, and he learnt, demotic English, he learnt how to tell the jokes and things like that. I met him once, he was brilliant.
No wonder you got confused. I think I got the quote wrong. The second part was, and Germans make the worst Germans when they stay in Europe. that was it.
The Germans made the worst Germans because they stay in Europe.
So Germans make the best Americans, and they make the worst Germans when they stay in Europe.
When they stay in Europe.
I'm missing a bit.
Sorry, I got it all confused.
Of course, if you think about Hollywood and you think about those early years of Hollywood, most of the people who made Hollywood had come from Europe.
Yeah.
They were the people who created that Hollywood.
The film industry, Stephen, has changed very much over the last...
I'm afraid so.
20. Yes, of course. But are there any directors, up-and-coming directors in England that you think are going to
I'm sure there are dozens.
I'm
a very
step
old
into
man.
your
I don't
shoes?
really know what's going on.
Do you not take any notice today?
My daughter just made a film. She's very good.
But don't you teach classes? Do you teach classes to filmmakers too?
Does what?
Do you teach?
I used to. I taught.
Yeah, you used to teach.
I don't teach now. They won't have me anymore. But I used to teach. Yes, I used to teach.
I started watching the series the other day for Guy Ritchie.
Called?
The Gentleman. I quite enjoyed it.
Well, there you are. There's hope yet.
But do you think that these people are going to take over from you one day?
Well, they've done that, haven't they?
I don't think
He's
so.
a very, very successful filmmaker.
Well, not as successful as you, but
Far more successful. Far more. He's earned millions.
You're too
Doesn't he make
modest.
the Sherlock Holmes films with Robert Downey?
¿Tenemos tiempo para alguna pregunta más o ya nada? Okay, me dicen que ya nada. Bueno,
here.
the last one.
Over there.
Since you admire women so much, what can you advise me as a woman who studies performing arts and aspires to be a great actress?
What advice?
What?
What advice would I give you, I take it?
Yes, please.
Do you want to be a filmmaker? Is that what you're going to be?
An actress.
An actress, an actress.
An actress.
Be an actress.
Robert Mitchum, you know who I mean?
No.
Robert Mitchum,
No.
he was asked by Michael Parkinson, well, what advice would you give your son? And Mitchum said, well, I wouldn't give him any advice. And then he paused for a moment, he said, well, I suppose I'd say, don't get caught. And then he paused and he said, nobody ever caught me acting. I don't know, you just do it. You do it because you can't do anything else, really.
If you want to be an actress, we have a daughter who is talented, but you've really got to want to do it. You've got to be ready to, you have to experience rejection, you have to experience all these things. So you've got to be passionate about it.
It's a horrible life. And then if you're successful, it's even more horrible.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a strange life.
It's a horrible
being an actor.
life. But it's, it's tough.
It's tough.
But you don't really have a choice.
So I want to ask the last question, and we will be over. So you like football a lot. It's one of your passions. Why haven't you made? Would you make a film on football? And why there isn't this big film about football? It's really difficult to. I don't know why.
Well, I go to football matches, and I don't know how you do it to make it. I go and watch the Arsenal at home, and I don't know how you'd make a film that was as good as what you see on the pitch. It's always ridiculous. Was there ever a good film about... Oh, John Huston made that one, didn't he, with Stallone? I've never seen a good film about football or cricket. Whereas the Americans make rather good films about sport.
Well, there you are. It might be an opportunity.
No. So no, I haven't. No.
No.
Film about cricket could be rather interesting, I think.
Well, ask Tim Rice about
Yes,
the final.
Tim, we'll
Tim
ask
Rice
Tim
will
to
tell you
comment.
the final test is a masterpiece. It's absolutely nonsense he's talking.
So thank you very much to you both, and thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias a todos por asistir y bueno, espero que os haya resultado interesante. Y un aplauso para...